It was a dark and stormy night, and the small town of Blackwood was cloaked in an eerie silence. The only sounds that broke through the oppressive stillness were the howling winds and the rhythmic pounding of rain against the windows. In a remote farmhouse on the outskirts of town, Nora, a young woman with a deep love for horses, had just settled into bed after a long day of caring for her beloved mare, Midnight Rider. Midnight Rider was no ordinary horse. She was a stunning black stallion with a coat as dark as the midnight sky. Nora had inherited the horse from her late grandfather, who had raised Midnight Rider from a foal. The bond between them was unbreakable, and they shared countless adventures together. As Nora lay in her bed, the sound of hooves echoing through the stormy night filled her room. Startled, she jumped up and peered out the window, but there was no sign of her horse. She grabbed her flashlight and rushed out into the tempest, calling out for Midnight Rider. The rain soaked through her clothes, and the wind howled in response. After a frantic search, Nora finally spotted her beloved stallion near the old oak tree at the edge of the property. Midnight Rider was standing there, his ebony coat glistening in the rain, but something was terribly wrong. His eyes, usually gentle and warm, were now filled with a cold, malevolent light. Nora approached him cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. "Midnight, what's wrong, boy?" she whispered, reaching out to stroke his mane. But when her hand made contact with his skin, she recoiled in horror. His once velvet fur was now ice-cold and slick, as if it were made of glass. Suddenly, Midnight Rider let out an otherworldly, bone-chilling neigh that echoed through the stormy night. It was a sound that sent shivers down Nora's spine and filled her with an overwhelming sense of dread. Terrified, Nora tried to back away, but her feet felt rooted to the ground. She watched in horror as Midnight Rider's body began to contort and shift, his limbs elongating and twisting at unnatural angles. His eyes glowed brighter, and his mouth stretched open impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged gleaming teeth. With a guttural, inhuman growl, Midnight Rider lunged at her. Nora screamed and stumbled backward, narrowly avoiding his deadly bite. She turned and sprinted back toward the farmhouse, the rain blinding her and the wind howling like a vengeful spirit. Inside the safety of her home, Nora locked all the doors and windows, her heart still pounding in her chest. She knew that whatever stood outside was not her beloved Midnight Rider anymore. It was something sinister, something that wore his form like a grotesque mask. For hours, Nora cowered in her darkened room, the storm raging on outside. She could hear the creature that had once been her horse circling the house, its hooves scraping against the wooden porch. It whispered her name in a haunting, ethereal voice that seemed to come from all directions at once. As the first light of dawn broke, the storm began to subside. Nora cautiously ventured out of her room and peered out the window. To her relief, the creature had vanished, leaving no trace of its presence except for the eerie sense of dread that hung in the air. Days turned into weeks, and Nora never saw Midnight Rider again. The town of Blackwood spoke in hushed whispers of the haunting of her beloved horse, and she became known as the girl who had encountered a malevolent spirit in the form of her stallion. Though she eventually moved away from the farmhouse, Nora could never forget that night, and the memory of Midnight Rider's transformation haunted her dreams. She often wondered if her horse had been possessed by some ancient, malevolent force, or if he had become a conduit for the darkness that had always lurked beneath the surface of the world. One thing was certain: she would never look at horses the same way again, and the specter of Midnight Rider would remain a chilling presence in her life forever.